So Holger, Oracle recently announced a broad sweeping agreement with Microsoft Azure, whereby our Gen 2 OCI cloud can now interconnect directly with the Microsoft Azure cloud. So customers can run, for example, Oracle Autonomous Database on our Gen 2 OCI cloud and have a direct interconnect with Microsoft Azure and run the applications of their choice, be it analytics, AI, or things of that nature. What's Constellation's take on this recent partnership?
Well, the first thing I had to do is check the date. So it wasn't April 1st, right? So Oracle and Microsoft partnering, traditional arch enemies, and really shows that the cloud changes everything. Yeah, so and the interesting thing is the two of the cloud vendors who have very good access to the enterprise, to the IT buyer, to the CIOs, are partnering to the success of customers. And that's the main takeaway of that part, going over traditional historical rivalries. I don't know how many bad things have been said either way, up or down the west coast of the United States. What matters is that customers are successful. And customers use the Oracle database and they use Microsoft business applications or analytic tools or whatever it is, and they want to run these things together in a fast way. And the dirty secret of networking, even in 2019 and for the next decade to come, is that the speed of light can be very slow. And so it's very important that you have the fast interconnects, the co-location, or any way to make that latency trip between application and your database as fast as possible.
Now this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Holger, this is the first type of agreement of its kind for public cloud providers. AWS has no such agreement. Google has no such agreement with any major cloud provider. Oracle and Microsoft are the first two companies to literally do a interconnect, server-to-server communication, in a colo like Equinix. What does that represent when you hear things like, for example, some of the other cloud vendors are not fans of a multi-cloud environment. It's their cloud or anything. They don't want you to run anybody else but them. We've seen some behavior like that from AWS, right?
Well, as long as you can grow as well as many of them have growing with that message, because you bring the simplicity of bringing all things together, you might run with that, right? The reality of software, at least, it's a multi-vendor environment. Nobody owns all of the software. And with software, I mean the applications, the platforms, and parts of the infrastructure to run it. So it's about vendors to collaborate on common standards. And Microsoft and Oracle are the mature, older people in the room here. And hearing it from the customer probably earlier and heavier than the other guys who don't want to hear that necessarily. And that's the reason for the partnership. So what matters at the end of the day is the customer wins, and that's the net of that partnership.
So how do the other cloud providers respond beyond saying, don't do multi-cloud, it's only us, we're the only choice?
Well, they will wake up to it, right? It depends how can the enterprise vendors get the load which is still on-premise into the cloud. And nobody knows the future, right? If you knew that, we'd play the lottery tomorrow on Friday or whatever that is, right? So we don't know if it's going to move homogeneously to one single cloud or if it's going to be the reality of what was in the on-premise data centers, that there's multiple vendors involved. It certainly looks, if you want to keep the lights on for the next 5 years, that you're in a multi-cloud world and that you run connections between multiple vendors.
Exactly.
And that's the big difference.
Now, if you come here just over, 90 days ago, 120 days ago, you wouldn't have seen the partnership with Microsoft. You wouldn't have seen the partnership with VMware. How does that change the dynamics of the cloud landscape?
Well, the VMware partnership is very important because other vendors said that already, but it's overall also important because VMware runs the on-premise. Nobody knows better, or no CIO knows better than from VMware to look at what is my current load, what I'm running at this moment. So being able to move that load to different environments, which might not be on-premise environments, is very, very important, especially because normally when you move environments, it means for the business, we have to test this again, we have to validate this again, we have to get the business involved to make sure that it runs. CIOs don't do this anymore when they start VMs on different new machines on the premises. So it's going to be a little leap of faith if you can do this in the public cloud. VMware is guaranteeing that, and that gives you the advanced agility as a CIO that you can run your on-premise loads on another cloud. Now, the interesting, unique thing that you guys have done is that you use the VMware Cloud Foundation original software as a bare metal provider on your side, which other vendors who have certain assumptions and hypervisors have a little harder time to get there. But that's the important thing, to run this as native as possible, because that gives the VMware folks the confidence that a VM which was running premise on whatever older hardware and is now moving to the public cloud is still running on the same VMware Cloud Foundation, same code, same instrumentation, and so on. And that matters, of course, to the CIO, because when they see that the vendors are confident this will work, they're more confident this will work when they go back to their boards to get the money for that.
So obviously on that note, Oracle's taking an open and collaborative approach to multi-cloud for its customers, giving them flexibility. And some vendors are taking it's only my offering, you're not allowed to work with anybody else, and that's it. When do you think this starts to heat up even more? 12 months, 24 months, 6 months? When do you think, what's your prognostications and forecasts?
If I knew the future, right? But we know that there's different use case for companies if I want to move, kind of like do a lift and shift, which is heterogeneous, which has to be run to heterogeneous. It's very clear it's probably going to be a multi-cloud environment towards, whereas I'm building something from scratch. I'm building a new application. That's where the dependency on a single stack is much more alluring often because you think you're going to be live and up and running faster. But then the backside of every CIO's and CTO's head is, I don't want to have a lock-in. And the typical cloud vendors make it very hard not to move things in and out.
Well, take AWS. If you run their databases, you can't run them anywhere but AWS. So talk about lock-in. Oracle's database, once you have the license, you can move it where you want.
Less lock-in is always important. If you're really going to use it, leverage is a different question. But to have it on paper and know that you can do it contractually is a huge deal, big deal.